was 2:14 a.m. when the call came in. Ben's car had slid off a rural back road during a thunderstorm. No one else was around, no headlights for miles, just the rain and a dying phone battery. He had one call left. He didn't call roadside assistance. He didn't call 911. He called his best friend, Marcus. No hesitation, no groggy voice or excuses. Just, "Where are you? I'm coming." And he did. Marcus drove over an hour in the storm, found Ben's car half in a ditch, and stayed with him until the tow truck arrived. They sat in silence for a while, headlights cutting through the dark. No big speech, just presence. Later, Ben said, "I didn't call him because I thought he'd fix everything. I called him because I knew he'd show up." That's friendship. Not the polished kind we post about, the kind that costs something, that answers the phone in the rain. And today, we're talking about that kind of friendship. This is the Path of Wisdom, where we explore timeless truths with fresh eyes. And the truth is, in a world of easy connections and shallow ties, godly friendship is both rare and essential. The book of Proverbs doesn't offer quick hacks for popularity. It gives us something better, a blueprint for relationships that endure. So in this episode, we'll explore what it means to be a gospel-shaped friend, one who shows up when life falls apart, one who stands close even when it's inconvenient, one who speaks truth when it would be easier to stay silent. Because wisdom in friendship isn't about being liked, it's about being loyal. In August 2010, 33 miners were trapped in the San Jose copper mine in northern Chile. A single rock, roughly the size of the Empire State Building, had collapsed on the tunnel. For 17 days, no one on the surface knew whether they were alive. Families camped outside the mine. They prayed, they waited, and they refused to leave. When a drill finally broke through, a note was pulled up from the darkness. It read, "We are well in the shelter, the 33. It made headlines, but what's often forgotten is what happened above ground. Relatives created Camp Hope. They organized meals, held vigils, and slept in tents for months. They weren't engineers, they couldn't dig, but they showed up, they stayed." Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." That's more than poetic language. It's a piercing truth. Real friends are revealed not by comfort, but by crisis. We live in a world that's quick to flee. When someone loses a job, hits a wall, or spirals into depression, we often back away. Not because we're cruel, but because it's messy, it's inconvenient, it costs us something. We don't ghost people exactly, we just fade. But Proverbs says, a friend loves at all times, not just when the vibe is good or the schedule is open. All times. That includes hospital rooms, divorce court, rehab check-ins, funeral homes. That kind of friendship rarely trends, but it reflects something ancient, something sacred. Let's go back to the mine. When those men were finally pulled from the earth, blinking in the sunlight, they were greeted by the world's cameras, yes, but more importantly by the people who never left, the ones who waited in the cold, who prayed through the silence, who stayed. That's what godly friendships look like. And here's the gospel turn. Jesus doesn't just teach this, he embodies it. Think about his disciples. They failed him. They fell asleep at Gethsemane, fled during his arrest. One even betrayed him with a kiss. And yet, he didn't run. He didn't rage. He didn't give up. He stayed. He walked toward the cross for the very people who abandoned him, because covenant love doesn't flinch in the dark. Romans 5:8 says, "But God shows his love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." That means friendship with Jesus isn't based on your highlight reel. It's based on his faithfulness. And when you know that kind of love, when you've been the one rescued from the rubble, you're free to be that kind of friend to someone else. So let me ask you, who's in the middle of a collapse right now? Whose world has caved in, and they're wondering if anyone still sees them? Don't wait until you have the perfect words. Just show up, because presence preaches louder than platitudes. And sometimes the most Christ-like thing you can do is knock on a door with a casserole and say, "I'm here." Reflection. What does it look like for you to stay at the mine? It might be checking in on a friend who's grieving, sitting beside someone who's sick, listening without judgment, holding space for someone's mess. It doesn't have to be heroic. It just needs to be faithful. Because in the kingdom of God, a quiet visit can echo louder than a sermon. And the friend who shows up in adversity, they show something of Christ. It was a quiet moment on a children's TV show that spoke louder than 1,000 speeches. The year was 1969. Across America, pools were being drained to keep black citizens from swimming in them. Some cities even closed their public swimming facilities altogether just to avoid integration. On that day, Fred Rogers, host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, invited Officer Clemens, played by Francois Clemens, a black man, to share a small wading pool with him. Side by side, 2 pairs of feet, one black, one white, splashed in cool water on a hot day. Fred took a towel and gently dried Officer Clemens' feet. There were no lectures, no protests, just an act of simple presence. It was quiet, but it was revolutionary. That scene wasn't about politics, it was about proximity. It was about standing close when the world was pulling apart. Proverbs 18:24 says, "A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." It's possible to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You can have hundreds of social media connections, dozens of acquaintances, and yet no one who really knows your fears, no one who knows your story. Proverbs makes a distinction. Companionship isn't the same as closeness. And some friends, they don't just support you when it's convenient. They stick, they stay, they step into the places even family might avoid. Let's go back to Mr. Rogers. That moment with Officer Clemens wasn't just about inclusion. It was about friendship. Clemens later said that Fred's kindness helped him heal from wounds of rejection and racism. It changed the way he saw himself, all because someone chose to stand close. We need that kind of presence, because the truth is, life will strip away the crowd. When the diagnosis comes, when the job is lost, when the reputation cracks, you don't need 20 people cheering you from the sidelines. You need one person who says, "I'm not going anywhere." That's godly friendship. And again, Jesus doesn't just model it, he fulfills it. In John 15:15, he tells his disciples, "No longer do I call you servants, but I have called you friends." That wasn't flattery, it was covenant. He didn't stick with them because they were impressive. He stuck with them because he loved them. Think about it. He stood close to Peter, even after betrayal. He welcomed Thomas, even after doubt. He loved Judas, even knowing what was coming. He looked out from the cross and forgave. Jesus is the friend who sticks closer than a brother. And because of his faithfulness, we don't have to fear rejection anymore. In him, you are fully known and still fully loved. So here's the question. Who has God placed in your life that needs you to stand close? Not with the spotlight, not with the sermon, just with your presence. That friend who's unraveling, that neighbor who seems strong but is cracking underneath, that person who's burned you but might be open to grace again. You don't have to fix them, you just have to stay. Reflection. Are your friendships deep or just wide? Who actually knows your struggles? And maybe more importantly, whose burdens are you helping carry? Because the church isn't a crowd of spectators, it's a family. And godly friends, they stand close in the silence. They show up in the dark, and they remind us, when everyone else walks away, what the love of Jesus really looks like. It was just after 11 p.m. on a September night in 1931. Two friends, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, walked beneath the autumn leaves on Addison's Walk in Oxford. They were deep in conversation, and it wasn't lighthearted. Lewis, a scholar and atheist at the time, had dismissed the idea of Christianity as nothing more than an outdated myth. Tolkien, a devout Christian, challenged him, firmly but gently. He said, "What if the story of Christ is the one true myth, the myth that became fact?" The conversation didn't end with laughter. It ended with wrestling, with Lewis unsettled, exposed, thinking. And a few days later, he surrendered his life to Christ. But it began with a wound, a faithful wound from a friend who loved him enough to speak the truth. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." Let's sit with that for a moment. We live in a culture where affirmation is currency. We like posts, dodge confrontation, and assume that real love means always being agreeable. But Proverbs flips that upside down. It says, real love confronts, real friendship corrects, even if it stings. There's a kind of love that wounds to heal, because silence in the face of self-destruction isn't kindness, it's complicity. Let's go back to Lewis and Tolkien. Imagine if Tolkien had kept quiet, if he had smiled politely and changed the subject. Lewis may have remained brilliant, but lost. Instead, Tolkien leaned in, he told the truth, and in doing so, he became a vessel of transformation. That's the risk of godly friendship. It means being willing to say, I care more about your soul than your comfort. But it's not just about confronting others. It's also about letting yourself be confronted. Do you have someone who loves you enough to say, hey, I see something in your life that's off? Do you invite that or avoid it? Sometimes the most redemptive conversations are the ones we try hardest to ignore. Now, some of us are quick to speak truth, but we skip the love part. We fire off correction like a spiritual sniper. We feel bold, but we leave wreckage in our wake. Others of us never speak up at all. We confuse peacekeeping with peacemaking. We avoid conflict at the cost of someone's growth. But the gospel gives us a third way. Because Jesus didn't just speak truth, he embodied it. And he didn't just confront sin, he carried it. Isaiah 53:5 says, he was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities, and with his wounds we are healed. Jesus is a friend who wounds to save. He called out the Pharisees' hypocrisy. He exposed a rich young ruler's idol. He rebuked Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." But he did all of it in love, and then he laid down his life for them. That's not just correction, that's compassion. And now, as followers of Christ, we're invited to do the same, to speak the truth, not with superiority, but with humility, not to win an argument, but to win a brother. Reflection. Is there someone you need to speak truth to? Maybe it's a friend drifting towards sin, a loved one caught in bitterness, a fellow believer ignoring warning signs. Check your heart first. Pray, then speak with gentleness and clarity. Or maybe you've received a faithful wound. Someone called you out, and it hurt. Instead of resisting, ask, is God trying to heal something in me? Because wise friends don't flatter, they sharpen. And Jesus, he makes us brave enough to tell the truth because he already knows the worst of us and still calls us friend. We've looked at what godly friendship does. It shows up when things fall apart. It stands close when the world pulls away. It speaks truth, even when it wounds. But here's the question we need to ask. Are we becoming those kinds of friends? Because friendship isn't just something we find, it's something we become. And the good news? We don't have to become it alone. The same Jesus who showed up for us, who stood close to us, who spoke the hard truth and bore the consequence, he's forming us into people who do the same. Not perfectly, but faithfully. So what does that look like? Maybe it's texting a friend you've drifted from, or asking someone, how are you, really? Or staying present when someone opens up about something heavy, or choosing to have that hard, honest conversation you've been avoiding, not to shame, not to fix, but to love well. Because that's what gospel-shaped friendship does. It doesn't retreat when it's messy. It doesn't flinch when it's costly. It moves toward people, just like Jesus moved toward us. And if you're hearing all this and feeling the weight of where you've fallen short, there's grace for that too. You don't have to be the perfect friend. You already have one. Jesus isn't inviting you to perform. He's inviting you to abide, to walk with him, to become more like him, to love like someone who's already been loved, completely, faithfully, and forever. Reflection. So here's the final question. What's one step you can take this week to reflect the friendship of Jesus? Not all the steps, just one. Because when it comes to becoming a godly friend, the transformation doesn't start with a resolution. It starts with a response to the friend who never left. Let's take a breath and remember what we've seen today. Godly friendship doesn't flash or trend, but it shows up when life collapses. It stands close when others disappear. It speaks truth when silence would be easier. And none of this is just about personality or preference. It's about Jesus. Because this kind of friendship isn't natural, it's supernatural. We can't manufacture it, but we can receive it and we can reflect it. So maybe today you realize you've been the sluggard friend, the distant friend, the silent friend. There's grace for you. And maybe you're longing for a friend like that. There's hope for you because Jesus is the faithful one. The blueprint he gives us isn't just good advice. It's a glimpse of his own heart. So here's the invitation. Take one step this week toward friendship that looks like Jesus. Text someone. Be present. Speak truth with love. Listen well. And in doing so, show the world that the gospel doesn't just change souls, it changes relationships. Thanks for walking the path of wisdom with me. Until next time, stay faithful, stay grounded, and let your life speak, even when your words are few.